One person actually asked me, why do we call it the round table and not a conference or a workshop? And the joke was that that's why we have the round tables in the plenary. But the seriousness of it is that we are all here to share and compare on a very equal platform as partners, as member states. So a little bit of arrangement going on. I think we have a full house now. So without further ado and without wasting any further time, I want again to welcome Bonnie to take over. We have about 30 minutes of this discussion. Thank you.
All protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen, and my panel, good afternoon. As Brazil has said, we just have 30 minutes to really get this going. And what we intend to do is just ask 3 basic questions that will sort of get us to the next level. There were presentations earlier made about the master plan and the conversation that we are moving away from peace and security and recognizing that perhaps infrastructure is the next boost. And that is a position that we all seem to agree on, despite where we represent or the organizations that we work for. And I think that will be the basis of our conversation today as we try and just answer the question of what next. Like I said, there's been lots of studies, a lot of work already has been happening across the continent. And a lot of ground has really been covered. But just to set the scene, and perhaps a direct question that I would like to put to His Excellency, the Executive Secretary for Igad, is that, sir, looking at all the work that has already been done here, and hearing from the different representations from ministries and countries, the big question is, from where you see it and the vision that you've enabled carry till today, where do we go from here?
Thank you very much, moderator. Very happy to be asked this very important question that really we are expecting a long journey in our region when we talk about infrastructure. Infrastructure is all about energy, transport, and so on and so forth. We are talking about 270 million or more than that population of our region. So infrastructure is to connect these 270 million people to one market or other market. Once in a time, President Museveni was saying about food security, the challenge of food security in our region. He said that food security is not a challenge for all of us in our region. Of course, there are places that are insecure in terms of food, but there are places which really cultivate extra foods. So our challenge is infrastructure, transportation, market, and trade. Absolutely true. So this is a basic thing when we are talking about infrastructure that is inseparably connected with our life, and this is a path to our long journey to the development. Yes, of course, we are facing a challenge of peace and security, And also I said it earlier on my speech that we can defeat the challenge of peace and security through infrastructure development. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga was saying this, mentioning different examples. So we are still have a long journey, that long journey that we can work like this. Igad is all about infrastructure and integration. So this is the platform to bring the region, not only the region, finally, ultimately the continent. So it's a big journey, very expensive journey, but ultimately inevitable journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And just building on that, you've mentioned that there's a long journey, and in front here we have varied representation. And perhaps I'd like to throw this question to Ambassador Elkanah. We keep talking about the fact that, yes, there's work done, but then there's RECs, and then there's individual countries and jurisdictions, and all these have different visions. All these visions, however, are building to something very similar. I think my question is, how do we move from the silo mentality? What are the real possible areas of collaboration to ensure that other regional bodies or individual countries can indeed plug into this vision?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think it is clear that the infrastructure gap exists. We all know that. We also know that the infrastructure financing gap exists. But you heard the Right Honorable Raila Odinga saying there are resources on this continent and, of course, around the world. The day that countries, national governments internalize this fact that we are all better off together than individually, I think that will be the point at which we start, because regional integration has been talked about for a very long time. We all know it is important. It is not just important, it is necessary. Igad, as an example, population almost 300 million. GDP only about 300 billion. And look at all the natural resources that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga just mentioned, outlined. We have all the natural resources that you can imagine. Why are we not adding value to them and creating jobs and services and goods that can employ our youth? Without the regional integration, each one of us does not stand a chance in a globalized economy. None of our 54 African countries individually stands a chance in this globalized economy, but collectively, an Igad with 300 million people, very significant number. But look at the GDP, 300 billion. And let me give you an example, with your permission, right, Mr. Moderator. Boston, Massachusetts, Boston Metropolitan, for those of you who've traveled in the US. I served in the US, so I spent a lot of time on the East Coast there. The Boston metropolitan area, Boston and the areas around it, has a population of about 5 million people. Only 5 million people. Boston metropolitan area has a GDP of 420 billion US dollars. Not a single natural resource, except for a bit of the sea. So what is it that they are doing to generate an economy of 420 billion? 5 million people only. What is it that they know that we in Africa in 2021 don't know about what you need to do to grow economies and create wealth and create jobs? We just need to internalize the fact that together we can accomplish and achieve much more and raise all of us together and stop this little petty border challenges that we put up to ourselves. Goods, people, money, capital must go across borders if we want these economies to grow. I mean, that's all I can say for now.
Right, thank you. And I just want to still stay on that line, and perhaps I'll bring in Ambassador Magdi or any of the people representing individual countries for your perspective. A good example that we still grapple with, we've talked about the senseless nationalistic tendencies that we do have as African countries, but let's just talk about standardization, for example, that we don't seem to have a standardized system for almost anything across the region. Perhaps it is my submission that this would be a low-hanging fruit or a place to start when you're talking about an integrated Africa. So what are your thoughts about how do we get the ball rolling as far as standardization is concerned with the continent, and anybody else can also respond to this? Thank you.
Yep. Well, standardization is an interesting discussion. We think about standardizing our infrastructure. And one of the things we are not going to do is reinvent the wheel. We're standardizing the design and operations of, say, one-stop border posts. It's been done in a lot of countries, so we will not try and reinvent that. What we need to look at is the flow of goods, custom controls and such like things, is bringing in all the services of immigration in a one-stop border post. And because we've tried doing one-stop border posts, and they're very effective in the border of Kenya and Uganda, Busia and Malaba. We have one between Kenya and Ethiopia, Moyale. We have one working very effectively between Kenya and Tanzania. We have one that we are putting up with the Horn of Africa project in Ramu between Kenya and Somalia. These then become models of how we do our border posts. And all we need to therefore, as Igad, is to examine them, study them, assess their efficiency and effectiveness. And if we find them to be effective and efficient, then we adapt that. It's an easy approach to standardization. We're confronting interesting challenges in standardization of road design and implementation. We have roads that are designed to be 12 millimeters wide, and others that are designed to be 11 millimeters wide. And you see the cause very subtle conflicts. Because the paving changes from a lane of 1.5 meters to 2 meters. So once more, that is not an extensive debate. It's something we can actually do. So there is also the program of project implementation. Project implementation is captured very easily, and I think we have very good manuals on project design, contract negotiation, procurement, and eventual award and supervision. And we have a clear scoping of the expertise required and the groups and how they relate one to another, especially using IT. Once more, we can borrow from the experiences that are there within the region. We have, if I were to share the example of Kenya, we have the ports of Lamu and the port of Mombasa. And out of either of those two ports, we have what we're calling the Northern Corridor, running from Mombasa to Nakuru, and then it touches Lake Victoria at Kisumu, so we can link up with the Juja at Port Bell. And so here we're linking up a railway, a road, and sea transport. And that is something we can study as Igad and see how then that is duplicated elsewhere. So we're able to reach other countries, because as the Right Honorable has mentioned, we are Igad, yes, but Congo is in Africa, Burundi is in Africa, Kigali and Central African Republic are in Africa. And trade for us in Igad is better when we can reach those other countries. Right. So that Northern Corridor is the same one that moves from Kisumu and it goes to Busia and Malaba. It also has another spar road that moves to Eldoret and Kitale, and then it goes to Swami in Uganda, or it moves up to Nakadok and Lodwa, so that it can link up with South Sudan and eventually Sudan. That same Northern Corridor moves from Nairobi on another spar road and goes to Isiolo and to Moyale. And then from Port of Lamu, we have the Lapsset Corridor. Right. That goes all the way to Isiolo and again moves up to Moyale. And now with the Horn of Africa project, we have a very interesting spar road that is going to move from Isiolo all the way to Mandera and Ramu. So you can link up with South Sudan. Right. This again is a model we need to study and see how do we replicate it in other countries. And vice versa, of course. The link between Ethiopia and Djibouti is something we can learn from. So that really is the discussion on standardization. It's not complex. We just simply need to make a decision and clearly agree we are not going to reinvent the wheel. Right. It is already there. Finally, the matters of standardization have a lot to do with commitment among partner states. The SGR in Kenya is a very big investment, quite a lot. Costed probably about $400 million US. If it stops where it is, it's not helping us at all.
Right.
Very important that we take it through to Uganda and to Rwanda and Burundi and DRC, as intended.
Right.
It's very important that it also goes into Uganda and runs up to South Sudan, and therefore, Sudan, as intended.
Right. So, I mean, from what I hear from you, there's obviously lots of best practices that we can learn from our neighbors across, and there's a lot of good work that we could borrow from. But then, like they said, the devil is in the details. The why question. So why are we moving as a force? Why are we not seeing these pockets of best practice being replicated all across Africa? Could this be a funding issue? And I stand corrected. Anyone could jump on this. But if we are agreeing that then there's a lot of work that has already been done and we're learning a lot from each other, why then are we not actualizing this? Anyone can take. No, nobody's on the spot. Anyone can take that question. FDB? The money people. Is it a money problem?
No. Thank you. Money is, of course, limited.
Right.
There is no excess money. But I don't think the reason why we are not utilizing the corridors that are already done, for example, has anything to do with investment money. The point of infrastructure is its utility. So we have a very good one-stop border post, which was funded, mentioned here by the PS in Tanzania. That was the first one. It was funded by African Development Bank, and thank you very much for the recognition. We have also the one in Moyale, Ethiopia, between Kenya and Ethiopia, and also the ones in Malaba. Now, the trade that's taking place between Kenya and Uganda is high, reasonably high, but the one taking place between Ethiopia and Kenya is very low. So there are other factors. The infrastructure is there, the investment has been done, but people have to trade and create wealth. So sometimes it is other things. Part of it, nationalism. Other things, just cultural practices. Other things are barriers that are put there. The standardization which you mentioned, which we have worked, I know because we have funded a study and activities towards standardization of transport service between Ethiopia and Kenya, for example, which is one of the things we are focusing on because the potential of Ethiopia and potential of Kenyan economies coming together is high. It's $100 billion GDP. So if you can have these two partners trading, that would be good. Even to the levels of Kenya and Uganda, that would be very good. But it isn't happening because there are still other factors that are in play that we as a bank continue to work towards, but a lot of it have to do with the nations, how they do. So the other thing is also capital, which I mentioned earlier in the remarks I made about capital development, the markets. We shouldn't focus too much on foreign money. We should focus a lot also on local money, because the risks associated with investment are better done by people who understand those risks. A Londoner cannot understand the risk of traveling from Nairobi to Addis Ababa better than the two peoples.
Right.
So if the two peoples don't trade, obviously the guy with the bigger money, for example, if I may say in New York, will not as well be willing. But we understand the risks. We know that if there's a problem, it's not as great as sometimes may be mentioned by your BBC.
Right.
So the local guys can trade. So we need to develop the local people, the local financial markets, the local capabilities of the people trading, the production in the local capabilities, so that now we can utilize, the utilities.
Right.
You hear that we have excess power production, which I don't understand myself.
Right, and talking about excess power production, we have a representation from Ethiopia, and I wanted him to segue into that, but also with the question of Ethiopia is a very populous country, and we're recognizing that Africa, we need to come together. Obviously, you have a huge market for a lot that you produce. Could you just first share your experience in regards to power production, and what practical lessons can the rest of Africa, Kenya, for example, learn from Ethiopia?
Thank you, moderator. I can't agree more. Thank you once again. I can't agree more on the importance of standardizations as a hanging fruit. You have to change the level of infrastructure development in the continent. But with your permission, let me first commend Igad for convening this timely, very timely roundtable on infrastructure. In the past couple of years, we have witnessed Igad cascading its products to the lower structure of the society in the region. It has become so visible, and it's a great honor to be part of this team. Your Excellency, ES Dr. Warqanah Gabayew, my good friend and my former boss, I'm really honored to sit beside you and represent my country, Ethiopia, on this August forum. The Horn of Africa has got about 300 million populations, out of which between 65 and 70% of the total populations represents the youth, which is a motor of development. It is an engine of change, could have been an engine of change. But as we speak, our region is infested with conflicts. It is the most underdeveloped region. And the major impediment to the development in the region and the precursor for social strife is lack of infrastructure. Because infrastructure is synonymous with development. As His Excellency, the ES said, where goods move, soldiers do not. This infrastructure development can be carried out by local resources. We have witnessed that happening in Ethiopia. The great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is fully owned and financed by Ethiopians. In fact, this could be the best textbook example how governments can utilize the local resources, because the finance was solicited from no other partners except the wananchi, as Kenyans say in Kiswahili, the layman in the street. The second best example is the LAPSET project, which is co-owned by Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Kenya. When this project was commissioned 10 years ago, it was portrayed as a pipe dream, a white elephant. It was taken as a waste of money and time. But 10 years down the line, we have shown to all our friends and foes that the LAPSET project is deliverable. The first berth has been commissioned. Other berths are in the pipeline. The road between Ethiopia, Moyale, Addis Ababa is complete. We have agreed and have shown our commitment to form an authority which will be in charge of the completions of the LAPSET project. So we can use our local resources. In fact, the Right Honorable has cited using African banks as a resource, apart from relying to the best supports of our finances. The GERD is a pinnacle of generating energy not only to the best interest of Ethiopia, but to the region. Ethiopia is house or home to major rivers in the region. And my government, together with partners like ADB, have been exerting all efforts to make sure that that energy generated in Ethiopia is not only for Ethiopians, but to the region. We have been able to build a grid between Addis and Nairobi. We've been able to bridge grids between Addis and Khartoum. And in fact, Djibouti is making use of the dividend of energy in Ethiopia.
Right.
So all is not gloom. All is not gloom in the region. We have best practices to learn from each other.
Right.
And regional integrations is possible through infrastructure development. And that's why my government firmly believes that infrastructure development is a new frontier. Asante sana. Amasakinalo.
Asante. You mentioned something very important that I think I want to revisit. You talked about getting African money to fund some of these projects. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about the bankability of some of these projects. That has come to fore many times where we have very ambitious projects, but are they bankable? That's a different question. And I'd like perhaps a representation from South Sudan to address this, even as you give us just the experience of from where you see it, what are the low-hanging fruits for South Sudan?
Thank you for the question. I will first of all say good morning to all the participants and my colleagues. And also I give thanks to Kenya for hosting this particular conference. Actually, what has been said before by some of my colleagues here are in line with what you are asking. But what I know is that mostly is that what has been said are true. In Africa, let me say generally, we have very good ideas, very good thoughts, but we only leave them in a paper. As soon as we leave from this conference, there is no follow-up of what have been agreed. And that is one of the things which is actually keeping us down. If we implement what we say by backing it up with actions, possibly we can move Africa to the highest level. It has become about a time that Africa has been left behind, and we sit and keep talking, and we don't implement. Organization of African Union has been formed. There were very good ideas from the founders of the Organization of African Union, but we have not been implementing what they have been saying. So the most important thing is for us, Africans, to implement good ideas which we have and to put them into action. That is the way forward. I think somebody, you asked a question before, where do we go from here? Well, this is one of the forums where we can gather, come up with ideas, and we move and implement them. So the direction is the implementation of the actions, the implementations of the ideas we have been talking about. The other thing is for us to stop our small skirmishes within our countries, the tribal wars, the local wars, the instability, the insecurity. When I'm talking like that, I don't mean other countries, my own country. We need to stop what we are doing, the insecurity, such that the development can start. There is no development with insecurity. They both cannot go along. Development would only start when there are good ideas and they are being implemented backed by action. And if they are backed by action, you will see the fruits. Asia has gone. The other part of the world has gone. People are going to the moon. And we are still in Africa. We cannot connect Juba and Nairobi. Not because there is no money, there is money. But we don't put the money in the right place. If we put the money in the right place, the development will go on. If we put the money in the right place, we have the capacity within Africa who can do it. And if we cooperate and forget about our small differences, then Africa will do wonders. If you ask about Southern Sudan, where can we get all these funds for development or infrastructure? The African Development Bank is there. If we use some of the money from African Development Bank and use them properly on a project, then you will see the fruits. If we use our crude oil money in the right direction, then you will see the results. So what we need is plans, action, and implement them, and stop the differences between ourselves, and also be transparent among ourselves. We can trade for peace among ourselves instead of killing each other. We can trade for peace with Uganda. We can trade for peace with Ethiopia, with Sudan. I'm saying this thing particularly with my brother in Sudan. Since we broke up to now, it is very difficult to trade with Sudan. We agree on the table, and then when we go, they are not implemented. The only trade which is existing between South Sudan and Sudan is what they call illegal trade. Why? Why don't we trade among ourselves? So the only thing, I know this is not the forum to come and air out our problems, but at least to put some examples here and there, say that we rethink of what we are doing. I also want transparency in trade. There are people who think that they can dump their sub-goods on others. We need transparency. You talk about standardization. You transport food from South Sudan to Ethiopia. You make sure that food is to the standard, that if you eat it yourself is good. There are goods transported to our country, South Sudan, but they are only for South Sudan. I can put a question mark there. Why is it only for South Sudan? They cannot be consumed in Kenya, they cannot be consumed in Uganda. So let us be transparent. Let us be trustworthy among ourselves. Also, South Sudanese are not to be excused out of this. They have got their own, they have got their own other things which our neighbors may not like. We air it out, we discuss it, we sit, and then we trade for peace. So I would suggest if we get the funds and use the funds properly to the point where within a year or two, I think we can move this Africa to the highest level. I thought African continental free trade, the first step should have been African freeway connection, because you cannot trade without roads. So that agreement is good, but we need also another agreement which will make this infrastructure a priority, such that before we trade, we have to put the infrastructure in place. And that will make what we are talking about a success, and it will be seen as a move towards the right direction. And not, don't forget, while we are still sitting here, some of our enemies don't want us to succeed. And instead of you people listening to calls from Washington or from Paris or from London or from Moscow or from China, why don't we listen to each other and stop getting advice from outside and then use our own advice? You know, between the borders, there are people who can talk to each other. Trade was an old institution. The people between each border, they can understand themselves. There is no any language barrier for trade. So if you need trade, you can trade even if you don't speak the language of that person. And I believe if we do that, we can move forward. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for very candid contribution. I see Ambassador Magdi, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I think I would like to go also in the same direction by Honorable Minister. I think that there, besides the issue of funding, there are other issues. I think one of the main impediments for development in Igad region, I think the issue of conflicts. Now we have 4 of Igad countries, member countries, are in some sort of transition. We have Somalia, we have Sudan, we have South Sudan, we have Ethiopia. This is when conflicts, whenever you are having conflict, all the resources will be wasted in that conflict. And nobody is going to speak about development in a time of conflict, no investment, and the little that you are having also will be impacted by these conflicts, developments. So roads will be, bridges will be blown up. That a bridge that has been built for 4 years will be just in a matter of seconds will be blown up in a conflict. This is one of the major impediments for infrastructure development in Igad region. Connected with these conflicts, also we have still have some border issues between our countries. For instance, our borders with South Sudan has been closed since the separation of our sisters and brothers in South Sudan in 2011. The borders are still closed. We just opened 4 border crossing points in October. So this is our borders with Eritrea, although it is not now, it is not officially part of Igad, but our borders with Eritrea is closed since 2018. This is also one of the impediments. Then we will have some political differences within our countries. So this is also one of the impediments. Then we have in some countries a high level of indebtedness, especially it was in our case and in our case with sisters or brothers of South Sudan. This will not allow us to benefit from some infrastructure initiatives, like the issue, for instance, the initiative for the Horn of Africa. We have not been able to benefit from it when it started, because at that time there are sanctions during the previous regime, sanctions on Sudan, and we have high level of indebtedness, so we have not been able to benefit from that initiatives. So these, among the functions. And also there is small, that the people, they don't know, sometimes our people, local authorities, and even the private sector, they don't know the opportunities across the border. So we need this, such functions are very important in order to raise the awareness about the opportunities of trade and investments between the countries of Igad. We hope that when we start to implement this master plan, our region will be in a good shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And that's very useful to recognize that while we have the bigger plans, there are issues that are hidden that are still standing in the way of implementing this. I'd like to hear from PS from Nairobi. Bwana PS, we've talked a lot about this, and we've talked about funding coming from people like the FDB and others, but let's talk about PPPs, because that has been the silver bullet for Africa for a long time. However, it still fails in many aspects, despite the fact that there are areas where it has really worked well. Looking at, say, the Kenyan experience or any other infrastructure project that you've handled, give us a sense of what's working and what's not when it comes to PPPs.
Thank you, and I stepped in for the PS. He had to go for another engagement. But our PPP experience in Kenya, maybe what I need to mention first is that infrastructure in its actual sense is normally a government initiative or a government responsibility, because like a road infrastructure is very hard to tax people for it to pay. But because it takes a very long time, then it's not very attractive to the private sector, because for you to recoup your investment, it has to take a very long time. However, we have actually tried now, and for those of us now, you have used the road from the airport. We are having one of our major PPP projects in Kenya. It is about 30 kilometers. It's actually 27 kilometers of road where the contractor or the project company from the private sector has signed a concession for 30 years. And we expect that the company will be able to recoup that within that time. But of course, you can imagine the risks that the traffic, we have projected the traffic which will use the road for that period of time. We also have to charge tolls, which because of the other taxes to the citizens, again, it becomes a challenge when you're also asking citizens now, they say, you're already paying taxes and you're telling us to pay for a road. So those are some of the major challenges, but our success, or maybe what we can see now for now, is that yes, we have one project which is going on, and we expect it to be complete next year, and we are looking forward to even the extension from Nairobi to Nakuru to Mau Summit. We are also discussing with another consortium so that we can also do the road, because one of the areas which we feel that probably sometimes the citizens don't imagine or they don't take into consideration is the time you spend in the congestion, or is actually a lot of time wasted. And for like between Nairobi, just the section to the airport, there was some study done, and it was being estimated that we lost about 50 billion just in the jam, because if you work out the man hours which are being lost, you're just stuck in a traffic congestion. So I think the issue which we have to work on is sensitizing our citizenry that for us to maintain those roads and in those conditions, then there has to be a price to pay so that you can be engaged in other equally economic activities which will bring better to the government. Otherwise, if we say we are not going to toll, especially the tolling, then it becomes difficult then to be able to do all the infrastructure from the exchequer, which has to be competed for with other essential services like education, like health, like water. So I would say that so far our first trial is not going very badly. We are looking forward to a very positive feedback. And I can also say, like in the telecommunication sector and the energy sectors, the PPP have worked very well, but probably because the returns are short term, so more investors are keen where they can recoup. So I can mention that the biggest obstacle is probably the time it will take to recoup, but it is doable, and we are doing it,
right.
And we are looking forward to doing more roads, hopefully, from the experience we get. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As we bring this to a landing, I'd just like to hear first from Ambassador Elkanah, and then finally from the SE. And my first question I started with was, where do we go from here? And Ambassador, we have the theme of interconnecting member states for competitiveness, right? And we're trying to get everyone to be at their best level. From where you sit, where can we start? Say 26th in the morning, you're back into your office. Where do we start?
Thank you. I'm not sure if I can tell you what we do on the 26th, but I want to follow up on my brother's point about government and government allocating resources for infrastructure. Our governments are already very overstretched. We are up to our necks with debt, all of us, heavily indebted. And so this idea that we must look for innovative ways to finance our infrastructure, I think is really critical. And we must, as a matter of urgency, make sure that when we have meetings, I've met a few private sector people here, but it's really important that we make sure that these conversations that we are having, that we have them with private sector. We cannot continue business as usual, government looking for money wherever it is that they're looking for the money to support infrastructure. There are, and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga did mention in his statement, we had a meeting not long ago. I don't know if Mr. Ngatia is here, of the consortium of pension funds. That's the Kenyan consortium of pension funds. They are looking for good infrastructure projects. Sub-Sahara Africa, the institutional investors and just the pension funds have assets to the tune of 350 billion US. And what are they telling us? They're telling us, you show us good infrastructure projects. And so, contrary to what people think, that they are not interested unless it has quick returns. The pension funds are long-term. This is about people's retirement. So what they're telling us is just make sure that we are around the table when you are planning and even designing some of those infrastructure projects, because we will let you know what we need in order for us to put money, because yes, we must get returns from those investments. But the resources are there, and just pension funds is one of them, insurance funds is another, sovereign funds, to mention the ones that are common, and they are saying, yes, governments talk to us. Think about PPPs, innovative PPPs. Think about regional PPP policies. It's difficult enough to structure some of the financing for infrastructure, even for a single country, and so it is even more complicated when you go across boundaries, but it can be done. We have projects that have been done across boundaries. Africa Development Bank knows they do these things between countries. But we must think innovatively. We must think out of the box. The resources do exist. Even commercial banks. We have regional banks such as Equity. I don't know if somebody is here from Equity. Equity is looking for good infrastructure projects, regional infrastructure projects to put their money into. So we just need to change our mindset and not think the same old traditional way of let's go to the treasury to look for money to finance, innovative ways. And I know there are smart people at places like the Africa Development Bank who spend time thinking about these things. So it's possible. So my 26th morning, let's get out and start talking and engaging with sectors other than public sector.
Right.
And look for those opportunities for us to together develop this common vision, to develop this infrastructure, because it really is urgent. Thank you.
Thank you. Essie, you have the final word. If you could just give us a charge and all the different bodies represented here as a vision carrier for this master plan, what would that call to action be?
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you. Look, the discussion we made today, now, at this podium, clearly shows that we don't have a disagreement on how we really can navigate for the future. My friend from South Sudan has said that it is not an idea which we are in shortage. the practical things. And also, it is very clear we have also best examples. As Ambassador Mellis said, the most important thing here is a political commitment, the leadership which matters, which can arrest conflict, which can take commitment to bring this region together. One thing from this forum and others, we are very clear that there is no country or village which can grow self-sufficient of everything. So we need each other. We are here because we need each other. So the political commitment which you said earlier about this nationalism? You said what?
Senseless national.
Okay. Was nationalism, let me leave the senseless, but nationalism itself should be a driving force for the infrastructural development. Nationalism is all about getting better for your country or for your community. So Igad is, we already planned this roadmap before 10 years something. Now we are working with Horn of African Initiative, that is initiative of the member states of the Horn of the Igad, and as well as working with the World Bank, the big project that really can be a very important intervention for our trustee for infrastructural development. So my colleagues, my friends, we are the son, all of us are, this is a boys club. I'm sorry we don't have a daughter of us here, but we said it very clearly, the only way out of poverty and arresting or we should defend ourselves from conflicts and poverty is development. And the most important component for this is infrastructural development. So Igad will serve the interest of our member states. So we ask all our member states that this is the region that you can make or you can break. Igad is all about its own member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Executive Secretary, for that call to action. And thank you very much to all my panelists for sharing your candid thoughts on this. And I'm sure that for the people listening and all the submissions that have been made are going to contribute somewhere in the different spheres of influence that we have. And in the next few days, as the conversations continue, that the master plan will have an even better landing for its implementation. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Brazil.
So just The Somali, we need a Somali representative there. He's a member, distinguished founding member of Igad. We need you to join the group there. Djibouti. There was a minister, state minister, and the representative of the Minister for Finance Planning should also join out there at the entrance. No, just go there and organize, yeah. All right, let's do that.